you are new here, my name is Casey and I'm the designer behind the indie sewing pattern company, Pattern Scout. If things look a little different right now, it is because I'm at my parents' house. We came down for the Thanksgiving holiday and decided to stay for a couple of weeks, so that's where I am. So in addition to hand making my wardrobe, I also really love to thrift my wardrobe, and I've been going to the thrift store a lot lately. I have found a lot of really great stuff, and one of the things that I'm always on the lookout for when I go to the thrift store is jeans. But one of the challenges with thrifting and with just buying ready-to-wear clothing in general is perfecting the fit. And if you know how to sew and you know a few little tricks, you can usually alter your clothing to fit you perfectly if you find the right item. Today I'm going to be showing you it's kind of a thrift flip, but not really. It's more of a thrift alter. It's actually a really easy mending, altering project if you have a pair of jeans that are just a little too tight in the waist. So without further ado, let's get into the project. I've been on the lookout recently for a pair of high-waisted, non-stretch jeans, kind of similar to the Levi's wedgie fit. I haven't found any of those yet, but I've been on the lookout for them. But these are a pair of Lands' End jeans. They're actually in really great shape. It looks like they've barely been worn, if at all. And the denim is a nice heavy weight. They're non-stretch jeans and they're high-waisted, which I really like. And overall the fit is pretty good, but they are quite tight in the waist. The fit I think is intended to be a little bit more relaxed in the hips and the thighs, but since I am a little bit hippier in my shape, they do fit quite well in the hips, but are just too tight in the waist. So I need to add a little bit of ease to the waist, and I'm just unzipping the pants here to kind of get a feel for how much ease I think I might need to add so that I can sit down in them comfortably and bend over comfortably. So it looks like I could probably add just about an inch of total ease to the waist of these pants and they would be a lot more comfortable. So I'm gonna add that ease in at the side seams. I'll probably also make some adjustments in the fit of the leg at the thigh and just narrow that down to the knee for a little bit more flattering fit there. I'm not going to show that today. I'm just going to be showing adding ease to the waist. Here's one last final spin. If I hadn't told you that the waist was too tight, you probably wouldn't even be able to tell, but trust me, it is quite uncomfortable. So the first step is to remove the waistband from the pants, and I'll also remove the bottom bar tacks on the belt loops and leave the belt loops attached to the top of the waistband. I'm just starting at the front of the pants, just past the waist, and working my way around the entire back of the pants, and I'll leave the waistband attached at the front. I don't want to remove the entire waistband. And these bar tacks take a little bit of elbow grease, but with a little patience and perseverance, it can be done. So I'll continue doing this around the entire back of the pants to release that waistband from the pants. Once I get the waistband and the belt loops free of the pants, now I want to open up the side seam on both sides, and I'm just opening it up down to the top of the pocket here because I don't really think I need to go down that far. And at the time that I was doing this, I was kind of concerned about bumping into those rivets that are in the pants. That actually was not an issue once I started sewing this, but that was just kind of a point that I decided to stop. Because the side seams are sewn with serged seams, there are several rows of stitches that I have to get through on these, but I want to make sure that I take my time and take out all of the stitching so that I have the full seam allowance available. And you can see that I've done this now for both sides, just down to that front pocket. I also want to go ahead and fully remove the center back belt loop. So I'll reattach this later, but this is going to allow me to add some extra fabric at the center back waistline. And I also want to remove these tags from the interior center back of the pants. Next, I can cut the waistband right at the center back to open that up and allow me full access to the pants. And now I just want to add some extra fabric to those side seams. I had some leftover denim from another pair of pants that I cut off into shorts, and they were almost exactly the same color and wash and weight as the denim that I am using now, so that worked out perfectly. So I'm just cutting 2-inch strips of denim fabric, and the length is going to be about 5 or 6 inches. And I'm going to cut 3 of these strips. 2 of these are going to go in the side seam, and I'll use 1 for the center back of the waistband. So I want to make sure that I cut them long enough that it'll extend past that side seam opening that I created by about 1 inch or 2. So I folded this in half and pressed it in half so that I have a fold to use as a guide. I'm aligning the top edge of that strip with the top edge of the pants where they would meet the waistband, and I'm making sure that that fold aligns with the center or the side seam, basically, so that that will line up perfectly. And so that's going to allow me to kind of taper that piece of denim. So I'm basically opening the dart on the side seam of these pants. I also wanted to remove these little tags here on the side
of the pants, just to give me more access to that seam. So I'm sewing with a 5/8 inch seam allowance down the side seam of the pants with that little strip of fabric tapered toward the center there. And I'm doing this one side at a time just to make it easier to access. So I've got one side sewn in. I'm going to do the same thing and attach it to the other side of that side seam where I opened up the pants. And I'm taking my time to pin that in place and make sure that I taper that little strip down so that the center fold is aligned with the center of that side seam. And also again with a 5/8 inch seam allowance. And I sized my little strips of fabric so that I could have a 1/2 inch of ease added on each side of the pants and a little bit extra for seam allowance. So that's why I ended up with a 2 inch wide strip. So now I'm just trimming down the excess fabric there so that it's a little less bulky. And you can see where I kind of adjusted that seam allowance a little bit to get that 1/2 inch. But now I've got that sewn in and I want to top stitch that in place just to fully finish it, because I wasn't able to actually get all the way down to that interior corner there. So top stitching that will completely adhere that little strip of fabric to the side seam and make it nice and secure. Now I'm ready to add some ease to the waistband. So I'm just pinning this in place really quickly back to the pants so that I can get an idea of how much ease I need to add. So I'm just pinning this temporarily so that I can gauge how much I need to add to this center back. So I'll measure that, and it was about 1.25 inches, and I had this strip of fabric already cut, so I lined it up and saw that it overlapped on the edges by about a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance here. First, I need to take out some of the top stitching at the top of the waistband. So I'm just doing this a couple of inches ahead of the place where I cut the waistband, because I only need a little bit, just enough to allow me to sew this extra fabric to it. And I'm aligning the fabric right sides together with that waistband. I'm going to trim my excess here at the bottom so that it's the exact same width as this waistband, and then I will sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance to attach this to the waistband. And I've done that on both sides so that now I've got a nice little strip of fabric here to lengthen the waistband. So I want to flip this over and press my seam allowances and get this nice and flat. So I'm just pressing the seam allowances open to help reduce that bulk in the seam allowance when I fold this waistband back in half. Then I'll just repress all the folds horizontally in the waistband. And I'm using my clapper here to sort of set those presses, and if you don't have a clapper, that's okay. I just really love that thing. It really does help set folds, and especially kind of fabric that's a little bit resistant to pressing. And then I'll fold that waistband back in half and press that really well. Now I can sew the waistband back to the pants. So I'm just sandwiching the top of the pants inside the folded waistband the same way that they were attached before I removed the waistband, and you're gonna barely be able to tell that it was adjusted. And I'm pinning this in place from the exterior so that I can sew it from the exterior and have access to those pins. So I'm just kind of feeling around, making sure that I get everything nicely aligned in there and that it is exactly where it was before. Then I can top stitch the waistband in place following that stitching line where the waistband was attached before. So I'm just going to go right along that same line with my top stitching. I'm also going to add top stitching back to the top of the waistband in that little section where I took it out. So I'm going around the waistband here. I'm making sure to lift up those belt loops when I go through those areas, because I don't want to sew those down to the waistband. I want to sew those down later. And here's how that looks, all top stitched down. And here's how it looks from the exterior. My last step is to reattach the belt loop, so I'll just attach those right in the same locations using bar tacks. And here are the finished jeans. As you can see, they really don't look that much different, but they are way, way more comfortable, and you can barely see the fabric that I added at the side seams and the back of the waist. I also slimmed down the thighs a little bit. The shape of these pants on my kind of curvy hippie figure had a little bit of a peg leg effect, so I really wanted to give these more of a straight kind of boot cut feel, and slimming down at the thighs and letting those flare open a little bit at the bottom on my shape gave this a little bit more of a balanced feel for these pants. I've paired the jeans with a fitted tee. This is my comfy tee pattern. I'll put a link in the description below to that. And they also look really great with a chunky sweater. I also trimmed the bottom of the pants for a cropped boot cut feel and just left the hem raw. I thrifted this sweater. It was just a few bucks, maybe like $3 or $4. And again, like new, I love thrifting outfits almost as much as I love sewing outfits. I love this whole combination. And yeah, I'm really happy with this project.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. And if you'd like to see more from me, be sure to subscribe and hit that little bell notification. That way you'll be notified when I release new videos in the future. Okay, I think that is all I have for you today. I will see you in the next video. Bye. Our neighbors raise hunting dogs. You can hear that screeching, howling sound in the background. That's what that is.